What is going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning into another edition of On the Road to Victory. I am your host, Jimmy Smith, and I hope you're all having yourselves a great weekend. But we're here, it's sicko season, and we're going to talk some birds. So I hope you're all having yourselves a great little Saturday here. It is a little after 6 o'clock here. Going to record this one, try to put it out as fast as I can. We're going to get through this free agent series leading up to free agency, March 1st. Right here, right now, free agency begins on March 14th. We know some tampering will begin a few days before, but I will keep you up to date. We're going to lead into that. We'll talk about the top free agents then at the end of this series, but talked about quarterbacks, talked about running backs. Tonight, we are going to talk about the wide receiver. So we'll look at the Eagles cap space, look at their wide receiver situation, and then, of course, we'll take a look at all of the free agents out there, unrestricted guys, restricted, the exclusive rights free agents. So I'll explain some of that stuff, and then we'll look at the top fits for the Eagles. So any thoughts that you have in between all this, I'd love to hear from you. Appreciate you all taking the time, hitting that like button, sharing, subscribing. All that stuff truly helps. So I thank you for that. But let's get right into this bad boy. And, of course, I'd like to start these shows off with the cap space. And if anything changes, I will show you, but it continues to be the same. We will talk about this throughout this process, but always want you updated on this. So the Eagles cap space right now, $22,375,816. So they can re-sign players, they can trade for players, they can do whatever the hell they want. They don't need $10 million for draft picks. I don't know why people always say that, but about $2 million for them. So you've still got money. You saw the show I already made for you, showing you how the Eagles can create even more cap space. So it's not an issue, I promise you. Now, the question always is, do we need to sign? Do we need to trade? What do we need to do at each position? And I like to go through this during free agency, the draft. We do it all the time just to keep you up to date with, the strength of these positions and where I think the Eagles could look to improve. So it's as it is tonight, wide receivers. And that's obviously one of our best positions. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, best duo in the league. And you heard it all year. The Eagles can't pass. You saw it in the Super Bowl. Whoop that ass. And I feel pretty damn confident in this team and love that, we got two guys last year in the draft that we talked about before the draft as fits for the Philadelphia Eagles. And, well, they're under contract right now. So you've got A.J. Devontae, but also Johnny Wilson, Ainias Smith. They're coming into their second years here. And we talked about, obviously, two completely different styles. Johnny Wilson, that big body guy that go up and get it. Can he stop dropping the ball, get his game together completely? Ainias Smith, can he stay healthy? Little gadget type player. Love to see him in this offense, having a player like that with AJ and Devontae catching so much attention. And then you have Jahan Dotson, who we traded for last year. And look, a former, first round pick by the Washington Commanders. I think this kid has a very bright future still. So, you saw a lot of things about him not getting, 1,000 yards last year and all this stuff, but I wish people would understand that he is the third receiver on a pretty stacked team, not just with their receivers. So, yeah, he's like the 6th, 7th option, I think, regardless. When his number was called upon, what we asked from him, he did. So I'm excited about what we do have here. Now you've got Danny Gray, Elijah Cooks, the reserve future signings here. Don't know that we bring back Covey, Campbell, or Phillips. Now, I know they like Covey. Do you, with him being a restricted free agent, do you want to put a tender on him? What tender do you put? I think a lot of questions there. And the questions really, obviously he's not going to get a first or second round tender. You're going to want to obviously get something in return if you put a tender on him, but you don't have to. So I don't know. Him, Paris Campbell, Kyle Phillips was on the practice squad all year. I don't know that you need to bring back any of those guys, but they're familiar with the system. So depending on how things go, maybe you see one of those guys back. But let's talk about all the free agents out here. And again, for me, I think the Eagles, I like what they have. I would look to continue to get younger there in the draft. Some really exciting names. There's always exciting names, especially at the skill positions. But, which ones are realistic for the Eagles, we will talk about here after this series. But I think there's still some free agents out here that, if you want to add bodies, and you will add bodies at camp, there's some options out here. So let's take a look at all of those players here, and we'll start it off with the exclusive rights guys. And, just like we talk about every position with exclusive rights free agents, I think pretty clear. They either sign their tender, which is, a league minimum there, or they just don't play. Now, the team, does not have to tender them, but if they want this player back at a very cheap deal, a 1-year deal, these are players with 2 years or less. So usually, an injury or they were released or something happened, undrafted guys most of the time. That's what these exclusive rights guys are. So you see the 4 here, most likely be back with their teams unless they just don't want them. Now, the restricted free agents, talked about with Covey there a little bit, and obviously he's on this list, but Greg Dortch, some other, guys where whether they're, drafted or not becomes a big deal. So you're not putting your first or second. Some of these guys that are drafted, you can put obviously their, original draft pick tender on them. And then you have the right of refusal, which you can, sign whatever their offer that the other team is giving, you can sign that. But if you let them go, you're going to get something in return. And that's what all those other tenders are. So an undrafted guy like Covey, you're not going to get much. And you don't have to tender these people. But if you would like, you can. Now, Greg Dortch, that'd be somebody exciting. So if these things don't happen, if they're not tendered by March 13th, the day before, free agency begins there, you're going to see these guys become unrestricted free agents. So exciting players like Kevontae Turpin, another returner in Velus Jones, Jalen Darden there, Devin Tompkins. So got some talented guys, Anthony Schwartz there, with some upside, still young players. So maybe someone takes a shot if they become unrestricted. But speaking of unrestricted, I got 2 pages here because there's 70 of them. And we'll start with the lower tier players. But this is all based off of, where the way they're ranked is their money. So just go backwards here. And it's the least expensive, Quadir Ismail. And then as you go up, Scotty Miller. And then the list will continue on the next page. But look, these are the back end guys. And these are more so where I'm looking for, with the Eagles, because again, we've got AJ, we've got Devontae, Jahan Dotson here, Johnny and Nice. I'm excited about. So I don't, again, think that you have to go any free agents, but you've got a lot of talented guys out here with, multiple skill sets here helping the return game. You see Scotty Miller there. David Moore did good for the Panthers. Craycraft, a former Eagle. Crowder out there. Josh Palmer, Diami Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. Allen Robinson's there. Noah Brown, I like him a lot as well. I mean, you've got DeAndre Carter, a former Eagle, still doing his thing, helping in the return game. A lot of guys that I would not mind. Tyler Johnson, Tim Patrick out here. Obviously, before he got injured, he was obviously playing really well and did well with Detroit having a stacked wide receiver room. So another guy I would not be against here, Valdez Scantling. And look, these are all exciting, but I think some of these guys can get more money than I'm willing to pay for. So that's where I go into these things. I'm not just going to tell you the top fits for the Eagles are the best ones, because they're not. So more so guys on this page is where I was looking for the top fits, but there are some really good wide receivers out there. Stephon Diggs, T. Higgins leading the way there. Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, Mike. I mean, you can see the list here. Hollywood Brown is there. And as you keep going, again, this is in order of how much they cost last year. So that's just how I went with it. But some talented players, and I did look at some of these guys and think that, maybe they didn't play the greatest, and maybe you could get them down a little bit. A lot of things, I was thinking about, and a lot of players I left off that I would more so love to have on the list if this were Madden. But I had to calm myself down from adding guys like, Chris Godwin, the Keenan Allens of the world, because they're still going to cost a lot, and that's not where I want to allocate that cap space, especially with guys like Zach Bond, hopeful to get re-signed. And I know a lot of you want the Myles Garrett trade, and a lot of people, Josh Sweat, keep Milton Williams. I really wish we could. I'm not sure that we do. Think we can with Mekhi Becton, but got to pay them, and you've still got cap space. So if you want to add another weapon, but I think Dotson for me is good at wide receiver 3. So that's why when I looked at this, who are guys that could be wide receiver 4 and not be upset about it? A guy like Chris Godwin deserves to be, one of the top targets on a team. You add him to the mix, it's kind of ridiculous at this point. But you're not going to be paying him what he is worth. So let's talk about the guys that I think are more realistic. So top 5 fits for the Philadelphia Eagles at wide receiver. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Whoever you think the Eagles should pick up, whatever's on your mind, maybe trade for somebody. We'll get into a trade show as well. Don't worry. But let's talk about these fits for the Eagles. And starting us off, Tyler Boyd, who spent most of his career here at Cincinnati. So it's somebody that really, I think benefited of them always, having some good receivers there. But look, he did not play the greatest and only had 8 starts last year. But you look at it, it's Will Levis and Mason Rudolph were his quarterback. So it's kind of hard to really tell. He only had 1 drop last year. And look, the passer rating when targeted was like 59.4. He had a 60 PFF grade. Not, great. He was being paid around $2.5 million. I'm saying maybe you can get him for around $2 million. Be the wide receiver 4, really provide some depth here, but also another weapon, that you can add to the mix. You want 4 wide receiver sets, a lot of things that you could do here. I think Tyler Boyd at age 31, coming into his 10th season, he can provide some veteran depth that I would not actually be mad about at all. I think he's still got talent, and having a down season like that, maybe that helps you, get a guy like him on this team, somebody that can help you in the slot. And it's not that we necessarily need that. I'm just saying, would not mind him as a wide receiver 4 in this offense. But again, I like Wilson and Anai Smith, so I would prefer them. But if you're going to bring in somebody to compete this offseason, bring in some veterans. I'm okay with it. And why not another veteran who actually used to play for the Eagles and used to get ragged on all the time, but the dude leaves and turns into an effing monster, 6'4", 221 pounds, 31 years old, going into his 9th season, Mack Hollins. And had 13 starts last year. Now, only 31 catches, 378 yards, but that's 12.2 yards per reception. And he did have 5 touchdowns, only 1 drop there. Somebody that's moved around. Obviously, after the Eagles went to the Dolphins and the Raiders and the Falcons, and in Buffalo, he really found his place here. And I thought, Mack Hollins, 60.3 PFF grade, not, exactly jumping off the page at you there or anything. But when he was thrown at, 123.4 passer rating when targeted. So I thought he played decent, man. And one thing I'm looking at, though, is he's a monster. And he's somebody that comes in and willingly blocks. We like to run. So if you're going to add a veteran presence, get him around $2.5 million, I would be perfectly fine with bringing someone like him back. But again, I'm hopeful that's what Johnny Wilson is. So maybe we can bring Mack in. He helps in this offseason and doesn't make the team, but bring him in, let him push Johnny Wilson. That's what perfect scenario would be. I'd like to see Johnny take that role. But if he, has drops and things are happening, maybe you bring in a bruiser, a beast like Mack Hollins to be your wide receiver 4. But if not, let's go with a little bit smaller of a guy here. 5'10", 180, only 24 years old, though, Elijah Moore. And things didn't work out for him with the Jets. Got traded to the Browns, and, well, they sure as hell didn't work out for him there either. So, you talk about another situation where the guy's quarterback's like Boyd. He's playing with Deshaun Watson. Then he had Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who I like that kid at UCLA. But then you talk about Jameis Winston, the gunslinger. So a guy like him, more of your possession receiver here, only had 61 catches on 102 targets, 538 yards, 3 drops, 8.8 yards per reception. He did have 1 touchdown, but 13 starts. And again, they even had like Bailey Zappi playing at one point. So maybe he, is cheap. Maybe you can get him even lower than $2 million per year, $1 million cap hit, something that doesn't even really affect the team. Bring him in here to compete with Dotson and, Wilson and more of an Anai Smith there, but he can help you in the return game. I like his game, obviously a former first-round pick. But to me, you could definitely go into the draft more so than grabbing someone like him. But I do like his game, and I think, in the right situation, still has a bright career. So if you're going to, find a guy like that for cheap, I'm always going to look at that. So, wouldn't be against it. But an even smaller guy, more of a gadget player, the Falcons traded for him. Unfortunately, he ends up getting a season-ending injury last year and did not play. So the stats you see here are from 2023 when he played with the Cardinals, Kyler Murray there. So you see he had 8 starts that year, 40 catches, 352 yards, 3 drops, 8.8 yards per reception with a touchdown. Pretty similar to Elijah Moore there, same last name. But I think you could get him really cheap. He's only 5'7", 181. But he's 24 years old, and I really like his game. One of those gadget players. Use him in the return game. And obviously with that injury, it's going to allow a team to get him cheaper than usual. Obviously small. People will knock him for that, whatever. But we know all about those small guys. Darren Sproles, baby. And I'm not saying that's who he is. But just saying, size doesn't matter, man. If you got the toughness, love to see him come back hungry from that injury. I enjoyed his game, in college. And I think that he's still got a bright future, only 24. So hopefully he stays healthy. And if that's something the Eagles want to do, I'm not against it. Again, looking at that talent that either dealing with bad situations or, just whatever it is, that's what most of these guys were. Now, my top fit here in free agency, why don't you go get a home run hitter, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine there, 6'2", 211, 27 years old. This will be his 6th season. Maybe you could get him around $2 million, 2.5, but he had a great season last year, 63.4 PFF grade, so it doesn't look that great. Only 9 starts, only 32 catches, only 497 yards. So what am I talking about? Talking about 15.5 yards per reception. He did have 3 drops, but he had Will Levis and Mason Rudolph throwing him the ball. Now, 15.5 yards per reception, 9 touchdowns with very little, 32 catches. 9 of them were touchdowns. Holy hell. This dude is a home run hitter. So for me, didn't mean to do that, but for me, NWI, as they like to call him, New World Innings. I don't know. Anyways, I think that, Westbrook-Ikhine is somebody that for me, look, he's a home run hitter. Jahan Dotson, that's not his game. Now, look, this dude isn't exactly like jumping off the page fast at you, but, he's played at Tennessee here for the last 5 years, and I think somebody that he opens things up for you. And if he's a wide receiver 4 here for the offseason, cool. And the reason I have him as number 1 is because you get him for cheap. I think that if he even makes the team, great. But for me, I am perfectly fine with what the Eagles have at wide receiver, what you saw there earlier in the show. And I think that if you're going to add to this position, it's in the draft because it's somebody you really like. And we're going into this draft, best player available. So if there's some damn good ones and you really can't, say no, you add somebody there. I think that for me is the more reasonable thing. But hey, it's free agency, so we like to talk about every position. And I know it sucks. Trust me, when there's guys like T. Higgins, Stephon Diggs, not being able to break it down and talk about why they should be on this team, I'm just going to break it down for you. We got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, so don't really need those top-tier guys. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, who you think the Eagles should be going after, what you think they do, whatever's on your mind. But if you need anything else, you can always reach out to me. It does not have to be about the Birds, but I appreciate all of you taking the time this weekend or whenever the hell you're watching this. But I will go through each position leading up to free agency. At the end of it, you'll have a recap, my top fits, my favorite guy, this, that, what I think the Eagles should do. Then we'll obviously lead right into the draft stuff. So let's effing go, baby. I appreciate all of you, though. Have yourselves a great Saturday, great weekend here. But until next time, I am Jimmy Smith, and this is On the Road to Victory. You all stay safe out there, and as always, go Birds!